So it's like, okay, I noticed that I slept like trash last night and, I was ovulating. Great. Like that kind of makes sense as a pattern. Oh, I'm a lot hungrier. I just started my luteal phase. Great. And so then you can start to do like the planning and then anticipating around that stuff.
What's happening, folks?
Woo!
I am Coach Jay. I am here with
Coach Katie.
and
Coach Wendy.
and
Coach Heidi.
we usually have 2 or 3 topics that we talk about before the podcast. We're like, hey, what should we cover today? And every time for the last, 12 weeks, I say, hey, what are we going to cover today? And one of you always brings up menstruation or menopause or some sort of female issue. And I'm like, great, you guys have this discussion. I will just walk away. You can handle it. But today you threw a curveball at me. You said you have to be in the discussion. And I'm really curious to find out why. So, so today we're going to talk about maybe not all of those things. So what are we going to talk about today, Heidi?
I think discussing the role that hormones play in female athleticism is a really good place to start. How your monthly cycle can impact both your performance, how you feel just in terms of general wellness, and how, you can use it kind of to your advantage, or it can be a disadvantage to, feeling great and training well.
Yep. Okay. So I'm gonna ask some questions, and maybe you'll give me some answers, and I'll try not to make a fool of myself. Yeah. Does that sound good? All right. And if I do make a fool of myself, I'm blaming all of you.
Great.
That's okay.
Excellent.
I'll take the blame.
All you need is an open mind, Jay.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's talk about this. So we sort of talk about the menstrual cycle and how it impacts your fitness, performance, your weight, that kind of thing.
Cravings, all the things.
Yeah, cravings. Yeah, how you feel, how you perform at the gym. So
Your place in the world? Okay, keep going.
yes. Okay. So kind of, I guess maybe walk us through like what does a typical month look like in terms of like what happens and then how you feel and then how it impacts what happens in the gym.
Yeah, should we do hormone cycle 101?
Do you want me to start with a really quick elevator speech on hormone
Yes,
cycles?
let's go with it.
So there are 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. 2 of them are the longest, basically. So you have your follicular phase, where your body is preparing to ovulate and building a follicle, which is the egg to be released. And then you have your luteal phase, where all of your hormones switch a little bit to prepare for pregnancy. So post-ovulation, everything kind of ramps down. So during your follicular phase, you tend to have estrogen that's building, right? Yeah. And actually, like your bleed is kind of like the first week of your follicular phase. So some things are happening. So your estrogen's going up. Some of your other hormones are going up, like LH, FSH, all of that stuff are going up. You get to a little bit of a peak. You ovulate.
Woo! It's the best!
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You feel like a boss!
incredible.
So many PRs.
And then
all the PRs.
literally, and then you're like,
Crash.
bye. So the back
Wall
half,
found.
the last 12 to 14 days, you feel like you want to crawl into a cave and sleep, die, something in between.
Yeah.
And then all of this, of course, culminates sometimes in PMS into the, a lather, rinse, repeat of the same thing. So your luteal phase is where you end up having to be a little bit more intentional about your training because your energy levels are really shit and your body's preparing your uterine lining for a pregnancy, a potential pregnancy. And so it's devoting a lot of resources to that. And your hormones, progesterone takes over, which basically makes you sleepy AF. So the energy flow of those 2 phases really plays into what we do in the gym and then just kind of planning your life around it. So that's as sciencey as I think we.
So great, Heidi. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, just a question for you. You just kind of described this. Would you say that women coming in here when they start, do they understand how these things kind of impact their training?
No.
No.
No,
can
no
see it
one,
on their
no one,
faces.
I would say like what percentage of people when you give that talk to people, like actually have any idea of what's happening?
Maybe 30%. Maybe.
That's a high estimate,
That's
right?
like maybe 30% of women.
Yeah,
Like this is what health education should have covered in high school that
totally.
it never did.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, even just outside of the gym, are you saying 30% of women are even kind of aware of that there's changes
I
that
wasn't
happen?
aware until like 5 years ago.
Yeah, probably
Same.
less. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like that's how bad it is.
Yeah, I didn't know nothing about this until actually I started my nutrition course. They cover that, and I'm like, holy crap! No wonder I felt like crappy 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and no wonder this, and no wonder that. So, yeah, no.
I didn't know about it until I started studying menopause and then didn't have my own period for a long time. Like I didn't know shit about
Yeah, I see it in folks too around sleep.
Yeah.
Because like one of the impacts of low estrogen is that your sleep goes to trash.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so it's like people talk about, well, I have insomnia, but it's like only certain times. And I'm like, huh, what times?
Yeah.
Let's track it. And it's like, oh, it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. So you had an experience where like you were just not having your period for
Yeah.
a while, and you said, I need to dig into this
Yeah.
and figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
Wendy, why did you kind of investigate this?
Well, because I was curious. Like I was really curious to see. I think I bumped into a book. I forgot what it's called. I think it was. Oh my God,
Was it Roar?
Yes.
It's a great
Oh,
book.
yeah.
Yes, I bumped into that book and I was like, that looks interesting. And I'm like, and then she just basically explains how your cycle really impacts on your training and how when you overtrain, that also tends to mess everything up too as well. Nutrition is another piece if you're super low calories. So it just kind of got super, like it just caught my attention. And I just wanted to dig more and more about it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a particular reason why. I just really caught my attention because I didn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Katie, what about you? What
I think
made
I
you-
first encountered it learning about nutrition too. And then it like piqued my interest because suddenly it was like all these things that I had experienced that I had had felt shame about or didn't know was like a reality that a lot of other women faced. Yeah. So it's like walking outside and somebody finally tells you like that color is blue, you know? You're
Yeah.
like, oh, the sky, oh, that's blue. Oh, right.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been looking at that color all my life.
You kind of unlock a cheat code to your
That's
body.
totally right.
Like, oh, there's a reason I'm feeling this
That's
way.
right.
This is the day that I should be feeling that way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then once you kind of discovered this, how this stuff kind of impacts, and I have a few questions about that. Once you discovered this, did it have an impact on your training? Like, did it and your nutrition? Like, what kind of impact did it have on each of you?
Yeah. So kind of the big picture for me was that stress overall is a problem when it comes to gains as well as your body functioning normally. So stress comes in a lot of different ways. Overtraining, undereating, hormonal stress. So when your hormones are doing this or they're not there. So low estrogen tends to kind of nerf your ability to perform as well as build muscle as well as uptake protein. So like fluctuating hormone levels can be a stressor when combining the other things. Just taking that into account, it was almost like I had to build myself some credits, right? In order to be able to train, I had to make sure I didn't add the stress load of not sleeping enough, not eating enough, and also I didn't know where I was in my cycle until I started tracking it and seeing that I was in a better place. But I knew that like this is a vital sign. Your cycle being regulated is a vital sign. And if it's junk, if your luteal phase is 8 days, you know your body is way too stressed.
Yeah.
So then you start to make some different tweaks to decrease the stress level, and then things improve. And so
I want to get more specific.
Yeah.
What improved for you?
yeah. So
And
what
what did
improved-
you do?
Yeah, my cycle normalized, and then also strength training earlier in the cycle. It was like power play, full on. So lifting heavier, doing some of the harder movements at the beginning of my cycle, and then toward the end, kind of taking that as recovery mobility time. And then I felt like I recovered better, and my body just, I just generally felt better, less burnt. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Wendy? When you discovered this stuff, like, what did it do for you?
Yeah. For me, it was more so give myself more credit, right? So like, let's say if I'm on cycle time and it's like that phase where I feel super crappy, not give myself a hard time about it, right? So like, let's say I was planning on going RX or sport, right, for that workout. I know that I'm feeling pretty crappy. I'm not feeling pretty great. Let me just scale it down, right?
Yeah,
And there's a reason why. So just giving myself permission to do that and not really beat myself up was super helpful. And just understanding my body more, right? So tracking my cycle was a huge changer too as well. I actually have it on my Apple Watch, and I also have it in like an app. And that, and it always alerts me when my cycle is coming, which is super helpful because then I also can plan my workouts also according to that too as well. And you know, some months are better than others, right? There's some months where it's like, it's really bad. Like it just cramps, headaches, it comes pretty terrible. And just knowing that there's a reason why, it's super helpful, and just not to beat myself up for it.
Yeah. What about you, Katie?
I think similarly, just like having a little bit more compassion for those days where it's like, oh, I feel like trash. It's like, oh, this is a big piece of it. But I think on the flip side too, like I was doing a competition last year, and what I did for like basically the 2 months prior to the competition is I didn't look. I didn't want to know where I was on my cycle because I didn't want to get in my head about like, I'm going to be exactly like, I'm just going to pretend I'm in like my peak power.
Right.
And just like go with it. So there's like, there's the element too of like, sometimes you have to just like, try not to
let it get to you.
Try not to let it get to you. But around nutrition was a big one for me too, because it's like right around ovulation. So like the sort of like you think the middle of your full cycle or the middle of the month where hunger also tends to spike, and especially carb cravings. And there's like a real reason behind it, because like Heidi said, you're kind of preparing for the event that you get pregnant or might have a baby. And so hormonally, you're what triggers the release of sugar into the bloodstream when you're like hungry and need energy, or like you're near the end of a workout, you're feeling kind of depleted, like that thing will give you that next boost isn't there. Like blood sugar isn't liberated to the bloodstream from the liver or from the muscles. And so you just end up A, really craving sugar, and B, feeling like you have none of that like push or edge you would ordinarily have in a workout. And so what I used to do was just like, oh my gosh, you know, like binge on all of the sugary things during that time and feel out of control around it. And then what I started doing was when I knew that was coming, I could anticipate it. And I'm like, well, let me plan good carbs to have. So I can have like, great, I'm going to have more rice with this meal. I'm going to eat more potatoes this day. I'm going to have extra granola bars on hand. So I don't get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh my God, family size bag of M&Ms. So that was a big one for me too.
To that end, I think in your luteal phase, I found that my symptoms of PMS and period cramps and all that were a lot better. Like they improved significantly if I focused on hitting my protein and adequately fueling. If I'm go
it's
beforehand,
so bad.
It's just like
you have no buffer.
It's worse.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, that was really. I mean, what I'm hearing. It's a lot of follow-up questions. What I'm hearing here is that mostly you just are feeling better about the whole process, like you're giving yourself grace. But what I'm not hearing like, okay, I changed my training and as a result, you know, I was able to like lift more because I planned this or this or the other thing. Does it just not work like that, or is it not? Are there no specific things you could point to?
You change your expectations. Like if I want a PR, I'm not going to do that in my luteal phase. My body is already trying to devote energy to other things. I'm just like, I'm not going to say I'm not going to try. But I'm kind of not going to try. Like that's where you tend to feel the worst, creakiest, crunchiest, most tired, all of that. So I would say, looking at my training, if it fell that week before my period, I would probably hold off and hit my 1 or 3 rep max the following week.
Okay.
I have scaled workouts in the past as well. Like if it's like, for instance, if Murph or something long and grindy fell during luteal phase, like I'd change it to intervals. My body just can't handle that much volume. And so I would change that as well.
Is that, I mean, well, you were just saying, oh, I just ignored it because I don't want it to be.
I don't like, you can. I mean, I know people who will like change their training around that stuff to kind of like coincide. And I don't really do that as much as I just like change expectation or level of intensity. It's like, all right, rather than working at like a 10 out of 10 effort, I'm okay with giving a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Right?
Same. I don't really change the workouts. I try. And sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not. But I do just give it a try. And it's different too. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? No, I'm really not going to do this. I'm just going to do something else. But I don't really change the workouts or scale it down or super scale. I try it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
But it's just so useful because like otherwise you get all in your head
Yeah.
about
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, I've been doing all this training and like today I just like wasn't feeling it. Like, is my recovery off? Is it sleep? Like you start second guessing all of the things unless you have this important piece of information, which is like actually it's like the phase that you're at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it, like to me, it's the reason it was such a weight lifted once I learned all this stuff was like all those things that I had been second guessing. You know, yeah, there's still like places to improve around all these things, I'm sure. And like it felt a little bit like, oh, okay, like there's a reason behind why certain times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is, how far down this rabbit hole do you go though?
Right. Like you're going to do 80% of the same things that you do. It just gives you license to adjust if you need to. If you're really feeling like this is not a good idea, then it's like, okay, here's what's going on. Here's how I can adjust to not feel so crappy versus just like, I don't know, whatever, you know, no real lever to pull.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, are there things that you can do? You started to kind of go down this road. Are there things that you can do to mitigate the negative effects of, you know, because I mean, in my previous role, I worked with women who would coach people on how to kind of manage their period so they don't have all of the PMS and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you do, and like how effective has it been?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few different things. One, protein is king, like full on. And this is true whether you're just in the middle of your cycle or post-menopause where your estrogen has bye-bye. Protein helps you recover a lot better. You just tend to need a little bit more. And that has been a huge change. And also
How much do you need?
Oh, I shoot for at least body weight in grams protein. Like if I'm only getting 100 grams a day because I'm not paying attention or not tracking, like I tend to feel a lot worse, especially back half of my cycle.
So if you're 150 pounds, get 150 grams. If you're 100 pounds, 100 grams.
Totally.
200 pounds.
Totally.
Okay.
Variety of protein sources. So I find back half of the cycle, fattier cuts of meat kind of sit a little bit better with me as opposed to kind of like the chicken, turkey, etc. So varying those up. So if I am in a cycle where it's like I'm eating more or less the same things, I'll add a little variety just so kind of some of the micro stuff gets changed a little bit, some of the minerals, and then just making sure you have a bunch of different vegetables so your micronutrients are better. One thing that I found working with my coach is like I wasn't getting many leafy greens, I wasn't getting many root vegetables. Once I added those things back in, the like super debilitating and I was eating mostly lean meats. Once I added those back in, the super debilitating cramps were like, oh, yes,
right.
whatever.
So what I'm kind of getting here is the timing on this doesn't matter. It's just do it.
Yeah.
And you'll have less negative side effects.
Like you need it anyway. So you may as well do it all the time as opposed to just waiting till the back half to.
So eating whole foods, vegetables,
turns out.
protein.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good for you. Mm-hmm. We sure about that?
I don't know. Man. I feel worse when I don't eat donuts.
Yeah. Yeah. What, are there other things that you can do to sort of mitigate the negative side effects, or?
I up my numbers because I do get hungrier.
So you just eat more.
I eat more, yeah. But I do track too as well. And as always, this is what we tell everyone, right? Just try to get the protein in. But I do eat a lot more. So my calories
for like what, a week or two?
For about a week or two, yeah. So I give myself permission to go up. So instead of ignoring it, right, then I just go up numbers, and then I try to consistently hit that same amount of numbers.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what I do. One thing that has helped me for sure.
Do you do anything, Katie?
Just other than eating more, like eating in response to hunger and fullness cues has always been helpful to me. Like, and they say like it's 200 to 300 calories extra a day that you burn, which is like actually not insignificant if you don't change anything. And then
like
by the end of the week, you're like, oh, why am I dying?
Yeah.
So just like not judging myself over adding more food when I'm hungrier.
Yeah.
What's funny though is like on the flip side, you come out of your luteal phase and you're like, why? I was just eating all of this food before and now like I've completely lost interest. Like sometimes for me, I like really have to work hard after that phase to like keep it up because it's like your appetite isn't the same. So yeah. experienced that too. That in that book Roar, she also talks about like BCAAs as being a way that's like 2 weeks before your period. If you can remember to mark it in the calendar and start taking those before, it can mitigate some of the cramps. And it has to do with like certain amino acids crossing the blood-brain barrier more easily. Like, I don't remember all the details. And I had some clients who did that before, and it's like, yeah, does it make a difference? Sort of. It was hard to parse out that from just like eating a better diet overall.
Yeah. Like supplements are helpful if you already have your nutrition fully in check.
That's right.
But if you don't, like, just
that's
do the food thing.
super interesting. I heard something recently that BCAAs were like way overblown.
We're like, and that's like the recent science, and that's why I like kind of have to qualify that because there's this recent research on like BCAAs not being everything they were like chalked up to be, especially if you're eating enough protein. So
You know, creatine's the new one that's supposed to be, it's not new, but the newer research is that it is helpful, is super muscle sparing, especially in menopausal women and when you're low estrogen. It's really good. So
it's the new one.
It's not new, but the research, there was another study or two that came out recently that it's really good to spare muscle.
I'm just kind of a side note, like what supplements are you all taking?
Magnesium, a multi, a protein. What else? There was something else I was taking. Sometimes some vitamin D, some collagen.
Oh, you're taking a lot.
Yeah.
What are you taking, Wendy?
Just 2. Creatine, and I also do, I do the protein powder and then also collagen too as well. But those only 2.
That's 3, but okay. Yeah.
That's funny. Protein powder. I'm just taking protein powder. I was doing creatine for a while and then I stopped. And fish oil. And that's just because I'm bad at cooking fish. So I like never prepare fish for myself.
Okay.
Yeah. For a long time, I just cut out everything. I do protein powder so I can hit the numbers, but like I just cut out everything. And because I was messing around with my diet so much, I kind of found the same thing. If I don't have fatty meat every so often, then I feel like garbage.
Yeah.
I do the bone broth every day, mostly for collagen, and I actually feel the difference. The only other thing that I take sometimes is magnesium, and I take a shitload of it.
Disaster pants.
I don't take so much that I have that, but
good.
apparently I'm taking a dangerous amount.
Just enough that you have like 4 beats per minute or something like
I've
that.
been on a lot of magnesium before, and it can give you respiratory failure. You don't want to do that.
So when my sister was in surgery, to put her to sleep, they gave her like 2,000 milligrams of magnesium, and she was out. But they were on all kinds of other stuff. So if she had problems, then she'd deal with it.
It is the most unpleasant high you will ever have. Just saying.
400 is.
Did you do that much too?
Oh, when I had preeclampsia, they dose you huge with magnesium.
You start to like get a sweat
flush.
kind of.
So it was
That's
like
interesting.
It was like being on the sun, and I got to the point they kept giving me more and more and more over the course of a day and a half. Where my friends saw my lab values, and they're like, "This is past therapeutic. Like at this point, your muscles go so relaxed that you're gonna have there are some consequences." And I was like nodding off.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Keep
going.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when you start this, you think I need to buy all the supplements.
Yeah. No.
And the more you do it, I find that if you kind of play around with your diet, you get less and less of that stuff.
Yep.
Because it's just like ridiculously expensive to buy stuff that you could just get from your regular diet.
So there's so many of them, right? And they don't only have that one thing. There's other things there involved too as well. And that also is pretty much what I tell people. If you are planning on taking supplements, make sure it's like one ingredient that you're looking for. And it's just so many things, like so many out there that it sometimes gets a little overwhelming too as well. And it's like and people just pick whatever one, which is like trash.
Yeah.
It's like just not great supplements at all.
It's weird. I did a hair tissue mineral analysis at one point to see like where I was off, and it's like calcium, magnesium, zinc. There are a few others, and some of them go up when others come down, and there's this weird relationship to them. And supplementing with food helps because you get one source plus another vitamin that helps you absorb it. Right. So like oysters for your zinc, or like spinach and whatever for your calcium, and some of the leafy greens are really good for that stuff. versus like if you don't eat food that is helping you with that and you just try to supplement, you're not getting those relationships with the vitamins and minerals that actually need to make the change. And so it's like you're literally just wasting your money.
Yeah.
And also if you eat bad food, then it can block the absorption of some of that stuff, right? So if you're like, I eat like crap and then I have this calcium, magnesium thing. Yeah, it's just going to come right out. Yeah. So I find that really interesting, partially because when you start hearing about women's issues, there's a lot of talk about you need to have these supplements, you need to get on estrogen and all this other stuff. And like, you know, this is one of the things I don't really talk to people about. But if people tell me they're on hormones for some reason or another, I have a bunch of questions that pop up that they don't want to hear. Because my limited experience taking like melatonin, which is a hormone, it really messes you up. Like you take it for a couple of weeks in a row and like all of a sudden you stop taking it and you can't sleep. Yeah. And it's just like your body produces this stuff for a reason. So how can you kind of help that? So what's your opinion around this stuff and women's health issues?
I'm 100% taking estrogen. I can't wait.
Yeah, so I have kind of two opinions on this. One, you're talking about HRT when you get to menopause. I think there are some great benefits, and the studies that were saying, you know, increased risk for cancers and heart disease and all this have more or less debunked that. And so when your estrogen leaves the party, you get these horrible hot flashes, interruption of sleep, all sorts of stuff when it's like crazy. And then eventually it kind of levels out and you get to a new normal. But in that time where there's so much flux, there are some things that you can do that are interventions, that are diet, adaptogens, all that stuff. But like the symptoms are so disruptive that I think it's really
say,
valid.
Doctor, write me a prescription.
It's valid
for the
people that have, yeah, for sure. And there's like a wide range.
No shit.
You know, some people have really intense symptoms, other people don't. And in the same way, like hormonal birth control, some people have really bad period cramps, some people don't. But I think in that realm, there's a lot more you can do with diet and exercise because you have a little more control over the other hormones like your insulin and those things via diet and exercise that then are cofactors for your estrogen. So like when you're menstruating, I feel like hormonal birth control is great for not getting pregnant when you don't want to, but it's really shitty for you actually having control over your cycle. Yes. But for menopause, fucking go for it. Yeah. Yep. That's what I say.
All right. So last kind of question here is, how has knowing all of this helped you coach your clients? Like what difference has it made, or has it made any difference as you're coaching females, you know, to basically try to transform their bodies?
I mean, I feel like in the same, I see clients go through the similar realizations that we've just talked about, like being able to, like, just having an aha moment around like, oh, this is actually a normal thing. Versus a thing that like culturally we do a good job of, like, this is a thing that you should feel shame about, that you should hide.
It's not an excuse.
You should like deny. Yeah, like, yeah, that's right. I think there's like a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I had a client who I first started working with her, and she's like, oh, my cycle is around this time, so I can't come to the gym this time. And I was like, oh, why is that? Oh, I was told that, you know, I need to take it easy because this is happening. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that was like the first time that I ever heard anyone say that. And then, you know, I told her, I was like, have you tried working out during your period? She's like, no, I was always told that I wasn't supposed to. And I was, who told you this? And I mean, you know, I kept asking the questions, and eventually she told me. Her doctor told her that it's best if you just, you know, take it easy and stay home and take like an Advil for your cramps and just, you know, feel miserable by yourself, basically, right? So that was like a big thing. And I definitely said, you're coming in to work out that day. And, you know, we're going to figure out what we're going to do. But I promise you're going to feel so much better. Even if doing the workout, you feel crappy, just moving afterwards, you're going to feel so much better.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big thing that I encourage my clients, especially around that time, because there's a thing about, and this is people that, you know, clients that don't know, right, about this whole situation, this whole topic that we just talked about. There's like a thing like I should not work out because I'm bleeding, or I should not work out because I'm on this phase and blah blah blah. And it's because usually it comes like from the physician telling them that it's best to do that. So that's one thing that I have worked with a lot of my clients about that. And then, you know, following with the nutrition piece, but that's one big one that has stood out for me. And I always, you know, even if it's just for a walk or hopping on the bike for 5 minutes, I promise you'll feel so much better afterwards. I mean, you'll still have the symptoms, but just mentally, I think it's super helpful just to move. Yeah. So that's one big one for me that I've worked with a lot of my female clients.
Yeah. I think one big takeaway that I see mostly in the menopausal space, but also with all women, it's like what works for your husband or your partner isn't necessarily going to work for you. What worked for you 20 years ago isn't necessarily going to work for you now. And hormones are pretty complicated. Like men are on a 24-hour hormone wake, rise, you know, sleep, wake, whatever cycle. And women are on not only your 24-hour plus your meal times and whatever, but you're also on this monthly hormone cadence. And so what works for them in terms of like, oh, just go to the gym, just eat this, it's going to be fine, doesn't necessarily fit into kind of the curveballs that your hormones throw at you. And so
how do you discover what works for you?
So one thing that I have found too, like speaking to that point of folks who are especially in perimenopause and menopause, is like you have to expect things to be slower. It's like the same, if you want to lose fat and you're in perimenopause and menopause, like it's the same things that are going to work as if you're not. But it's like the level of consistency has to be a little bit greater, and then the time period has to be a little bit longer, is what, like, for most people is just like the reality of the new situation. What'd you ask?
I asked, how do you discover what works for you?
Oh,
I mean, you try it and you ride it out for a while. And so sometimes it takes a month or two to kind of see if it's working, just like a training cycle. Is this squat cycle working for me? Well, I did squats one day and I'm not stronger now. I didn't hit a PR. Well, it's the same as eating a certain way for a week and saying I didn't lose weight or I don't feel any better. Yeah. You know, so there are a lot of metrics.
Can you, so you've been through this. Can you give specifics of like, I want to discover what's going to work for me, but, but you know, like I want to discover what's going to work. What's the first step that I need to take?
So there are a few. I think it goes back to the basics: sleep, nutrition, training.
But what's the first thing I need to do?
Eat enough.
Okay. I'll give you a suggestion. How about tracking your cycle?
Oh, you mean, okay. So metrics bound.
Yeah. Cause like basically like we've made a lot of general recommendations.
Yeah.
But the answer is always, it depends.
Yes.
So then I'm walking away going, well, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's some great apps to help you do it now.
Yeah. So what's the first step then?
You need a thermometer and an app, generally.
A thermometer?
You track your basal body temperature. That'll tell you that for sure you are ovulating, your hormones are peaking, your body temperature is rising for your luteal phase, and then as you get ready to bleed, your body temperature is going to drop. Okay.
All right, so you're tracking.
Yep.
Yeah, and how long do you track before you start to make any changes?
I mean, you're not going to have an idea of your baseline cycle for at least a month or so. So tracking from the first day of your period to the first day of the next to understand what that baseline is.
Yep.
Then start to make some interventions and see if there were parameters to improve. Did they improve this month or is it the same?
Yeah.
And then you can look at other metrics.
Yeah.
If everything is checking out.
I've learned so much from the app that I use called Flow. I don't know what
love
you.
Flow.
I love Flow.
Yeah.
But it will
Flow.
tell you like because the cool thing is too is like even we've been like we were really dumping on the luteal phase, and it is shitty for a lot of reasons, but there's actually great things about it too. Yeah. Like you become more eloquent, like you are more in tune with things. So like if you want to be like creative and write and like talk to and like relate to people, like that's the phase to do it, because you're like hella in touch with all the things. And it's funny because like, and like, so Flow will kind of alert you to, oh, these are different things that you might experience. Here's
I don't
like,
get that.
Oh, well, you got to dig deeper.
I don't get those. I don't feel that way.
There's one I used for a while called Fitter Woman that actually gives you training recommendations. So in a similar way, that was kind of cool to see like, hey, here's where you are in your cycle. Here's a recommendation that you might take into account.
Yeah. Definitely highly recommend.
Okay, so you're tracking it, right? And I guess the question is, why would you track it in the first place? Like, what outcomes are you trying to change?
I think to look for patterns.
Yeah.
So it's like anything. Like you can like we do in-body scans. That's the other thing too. Is like don't scan during your cycle because it will not be amazing. But basically, like it's a way to calibrate. So it's like, okay, I noticed that I slept like trash last night and I was ovulating. Great. Like that kind of makes sense as a pattern. Oh, I'm a lot hungrier. I just started my luteal phase. Great. And so then you can start to do like the planning and then anticipating around that stuff. Like I've had folks that around like the insomnia used to be really bad and they would freak out and try to do all these things. But when you realize that it's tied to estrogen, then you realize is that it's not long lasting. And it's like, oh, so this is only going to be a day, which means I don't have to go like upturn the cart. I don't have to freak out. And even when I'm laying there, if I know that's what's happening, they don't need to try to fight it either. I can be like, all right, I can get great rest just by closing my eyes. I don't even have to fall asleep, right? Like there's ways to kind of.
Yeah. So I guess for a client coming in here, they want to lose weight, right? How could this help them?
There are a lot of ways.
Yeah, don't starve yourself in the luteal phase if you're hungrier.
Okay.
Like I see that all the time.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not responding. I'm like following these numbers and I'm not responding to my increased hunger cues, and then it backfires because they end up eating an entire thing of Krispy Kreme donuts on a Sunday, which isn't like the worst.
Yeah,
thing to
or if your weight goes up, right?
Yeah,
during
that's
that
right.
time, it's not because you actually the thing is not working. It's because things are happening, right?
Yeah.
But at that weight will drop again. So that's one big one that people they freak out. Like, am I eating too much? Do I need to eat less?
My pants don't fit.
Yes. No. It's only temporarily, but just remember that weight will drop again. Yeah. So just, that too, if people are managing their weight.
Right. Okay. So like when you measure matters and like what you expect. And but, the real danger here is like you weigh yourself at the wrong time, and you're like, this didn't go well. I'm going to throw the whole thing out the window.
Yeah.
And it happens to be the time that you want to eat 5 donuts.
Yeah.
So it's like,
which is why we tell people not to scan when they're in their period because that never.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So kind of knowing that stuff. So you have the awareness. Now you know the stuff. What other changes would you make? Is it pretty much the standard, like eat more protein or whatever? Are there any other specific changes you would make if I wanted to lose weight?
So, I won't address that. Sorry, I wanted to go down another rabbit hole before you said losing weight. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Like, there's no reason to track this if you're not trying to change something, right?
Yeah, I mean, the other side of trying to change something is if you have an irregular period, and often when you see women that are stressed or like they've never had a regular period, or sometimes dabbling with PCOS or having some other hormonal stuff coming in, sometimes being overweight can throw your hormones, especially with your insulin resistance, creating some non-ovulatory cycles. Tracking can help get your period back to a normal range, and that does also your estrogen and all those sex hormones coincide as well with your hunger hormones. So
right. Okay.
That was science and not something to action.
Yeah. No, I guess what I'm trying to get to here is some actionable things for somebody that has that goal. Like if you have PCOS or like other things, those are like different goals, different things you're trying to solve for, right?
Yeah.
So like someone, just a normal person, right, assuming they don't have any major sort of imbalances or whatever, who wants to lose weight. Now they've tracked, what's going on, and they're also, eating the diet you recommend. Are there any other changes that you would make, or is that enough?
Sleep, all sleep. Especially if you're not getting 7+ hours a night, like I'd say even bordering on 8 or more in your luteal phase. Like,
okay, so you would sleep more during that phase?
100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fundamental things that we can start with and see how it goes. Try it, right? And if it doesn't work, then there's things we can tweak. But usually that's enough.
Yeah.
For the most part, that's more than enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's not like a giant like special snowflake program that you have to have. Yeah.
You just
okay.
have to be more intentional. The things that people can get away with sometimes are generally not things that you want to try to get away with when you have a big goal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Well, I think I hopefully didn't embarrass myself too much. Did you guys get everything out, or are we going to talk about this again next week?
I mean, we can keep going.
We can talk about it every week.
I'm out for that one. All right. Well, appreciate y'all. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, we've got plenty of others. Go check out this one over here.